All right, good. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much to Rabbi Lebowitz. Rabbi Lebowitz just told me that this is his fifth to last event of the evening. So, Baruch Hashem, we really appreciate your devotion to Sha'alvim. Someone thought that I put the wrong Rabbi Aryeh Lebowitz on the flyer, but I told them that even though Rabbi Lebowitz, Baruch Hashem, went to Karen B'Yavna, and we're, as to quote Rabbi Unger, we're all on the same team, but Rabbi Lebowitz, Baruch Hashem, is a proud parent of three amazing Sha'alvim Talmidim, one of which is here tonight. Shout out to Daniel Lebowitz.
And a future Sha'alvim Talmidah.
Future Sha'alvim Talmidah, planning to go next year, Baruch Hashem. So tonight's really going to be a little bit of a discussion to really piggyback on a yesod that many of us, I'm sure, have heard many, many times, whether from Rav Yama or other Rabbanim in Sha'alvim. But it's really to make it a little bit more practical. As many of us know, Rav Yama is very fond of quoting the famous letter from Rav Hutner and Pachad Yitzchak, the notion of living a broad life, not a double life. And it's a beautiful idea. You know, sometimes it stays up here. And really the goal of this evening is to try and bring it down a little bit, to think in a really concrete, practical, tangible way how we can live a broad life, not a double life, how we can really, to quote the title of the shir, even though Rabbi Lebowitz didn't love that title, to try and be a lechatchila Jew in every aspect and facet and stage of our lives. So presumably there are people both in this room and watching the video at home who really fit into one of three categories in terms of the stages in which they find themselves. First, you have those who are in yeshiva, whether they're in Sha'alvim, whether they're in other places, whether they're learning full-time in YU. There are those that are in the kollel yeshiva type of environments. Then there are those who are in the college environments. Those are in YU, land. There's other places where they're trying to balance learning and general studies. And then there are those who are post-college, those who are working, those who are hopefully trying to build a family, and so on and so forth. And the question really is, how does the expression of what it means to be a Ben Torah shift from one stage to the next? Does being a Ben Torah mean the same thing in each of these three stages? Or is there a different form, a different look of what it means to be a Ben Torah in the three stages that a person goes through in life?
Okay. I'm just going to respond to the introduction before I respond to the question, if that's okay. I feel like every time I do something for Sha'alvim or together with Sha'alvim, there's the mandatory Aryeh Lebowitz joke or story that has to be told. So I will share with you. This week I was in Israel, and on the plane on the way to Israel, the two seats over from me was my chavrusa from Karen B'Yavna, Rabbi Meir Horowitz, who just happened to have been sitting two seats over me. And in between us was this guy that I didn't know, and he came on the plane and he looked at me and he goes, "You look so familiar." And I said, maybe the billboard? No, but I said, "My name is Aryeh Lebowitz." He goes, "Oh, yeah, your mom was my teacher in Frisch." I'm like, okay, I must look really familiar. So so that's Aleph. Second of all, I never heard this thing. Rav Yama talks about broad life. I've never heard anyone imitating him doing that or saying anything like that. It's like so shocking to me. I'm like a little stunned. And a third point in the introduction to address my initial problem was not so much with the title; it was with the original title was how to be a lechatchila Jew versus a b'diavad Jew, and every question was, are you a b'diavad Jew if? And the answer is going to ultimately be yeah, and like that's horrible to tell a person that you're a b'diavad Jew. Like that's that's why we changed the wording a little bit. We're not talking about being a lechatchila because what I said to Rav Avi Rosalimsky is that people have many mitzvahs that they do in their life. So, you could say you did this mitzvah in a b'diavad kind of way, and it's not shattering. But people only live one life. So to say, oh, you're living the life of a b'diavad Jew, like that's shattering. That's something that can break a person. So I certainly don't want to break any vulnerable people over here. So that's why I didn't think it was best to frame the conversation as a lechatchila Jew versus a b'diavad Jew, but to talk about how we strive and how we grow at different stages. So now I'll get to your question. So the question was at different stages of life how to best. I don't even remember the question anymore, but it was something about at different stages of life how to best live the life of a Ben Torah, right? And you alluded to 3 particular stages, which is interesting, that the 3 stages of life are yeshiva, meaning in this case Sha'alvim, and then YU/Landers, and then the rest of your life. Right, meaning it is important to note that life starts before Sha'alvim. You're not accepted till you're like 17 or 18 years old. So there are things that one should do before, but that's already water under the bridge, obviously, for everybody here. And there are different tkufos within YU, let's say. I assume there are no Landers guys here? Are there? Okay, so there are different tkufos within that next stage. There's the college tkufa, or ADLP, as the case may be. There's the smicha tkufa, which looking forward to welcoming all of you and should follow the footsteps of some wonderful smicha talmidim and spend a few extra years here learning. It'll be great for you, good for your neshama, good for the yeshiva, good for your future. And then of course there's the beginning of marriage and life, and and as life goes on and your kids grow up. So it's important for a person to recognize that things change through each stage. But the one point I really wanted to make over here is that sometimes you're in an environment in life, rarely, but sometimes you're in an environment in life where if you just go with the flow and do what everyone expects you to do, you're perfect, you're golden, and then everything's going to be great. When you're in Sha'alvim, it's a pristine environment. And I'm not just saying this to pander to the Sha'alvim crowd. There are other yeshivas also that there's only Torah. There's first Seder, second Seder, third Seder. There's Musar Seder, Halacha Seder. Meaning the environment lends itself to one of working on yourself, growing in Torah, growing in your midos, developing ksharim with rebbeim. So in that kind of environment, you can almost let your guard down and just sort of go with let the wave take you where it's meant to take you. But then you move on to other environments in life. I think for many people, the reason that YU is a little bit, when they come to yeshiva here, it's a little bit jarring, is that you no longer have that, meaning you now have to make choices. Am I going to study for the midterm, or am I going to learn the regular night seder that I always learn? How much of a sacrifice should I make in terms of my grades in order to be able to make sure that I'm still kavua in my sedarim? Each and every day when you leave the Beis Medrash after mincha, whether you daven or you leave your shirim, wherever it is that you daven mincha, you leave the breakaway minyan, whatever it is, wherever you daven mincha, and you head off to your classes. So there's part of you thinking, is this really where I'm supposed to be? Should I be going to a class, or should I be going to... So once you're in and there are all sorts of wonderful programs here that have nothing to do with Torah. They have Rose asking questions about l'chadchila lives with Chinese food. So to what extent... So I said to Rabbi Rosalimsky, I said, I'm available after the rabbi's desk shir at 8 o'clock. He's like, no, you're kidding, this Sha'alvim, that's night seder. Guys aren't going to miss night seder. And of course guys aren't going to miss night seder for it, as you shouldn't. But once you get into that realm of having to make choices, so then you have to teach yourself how to be regimented, how to be disciplined, how to have sidarim that are kavua based on your own kavius, not based on someone else making them kavua. Because night seder could be as long as short as you want it to be, and to get in the habit of knowing when to set yourself time to study, when to not set yourself time to study, how to maintain, overcome the tremendous yetzer hara for dishonesty, which certainly happens for anyone in any sort of college environment, and that's part of a preparation for the rest of your life. Because if you think the yetzer hara is great now for that kind of thing, it's even greater when there's real money. When there's real money on the line, when in your perception there's a promotion on the line. So that becomes it's a great training ground for the rest of your life. And then the avoda, the rest of your life, is to make sure that you're growing. Meaning it's kind of obvious that you're going to be growing when you're in Sha'alvim and when you're in YU and when you're in YU Smicha. The rest of your life, it's not as obvious. A lot of times people plateau, or worse, and you want to make sure that you're growing each and every day, that you're becoming a better Jew each and every day, in your learning, in your midos, and that requires a great deal of mindfulness.
So you certainly touched on this a little bit. We're in a room full of many guys who are currently in YU. And Baruch Hashem, is your time in YU and also in your time in Landers, you certainly spent a lot of time in a base medrash getting to know guys at this stage in their life and in their development. And also as a Rav in North Woodmere and as a leader in the community in the 5 towns and really so much larger than the 5 towns, you see balabatim who are successful and you see balabatim who are less successful. You see guys in YU and Landers who are successful and you see guys in YU and Landers who are less successful. So really the question is, again to the room of YU guys, is how should people be spending their time now? What are tips that guys can utilize in this stage right now to help them develop the muscles to become successful balabatim later?
Yeah. Probably the most important factor, I always quote Rabbi Reisman, who always says that when he gets a phone call from somebody about a shidduch for a young man, and the person says, is this the kind of young man who, after he's married, is going to go out and learn night seder? Or questions along those lines. So he always responds the same thing. It depends who he marries. Right? And that's the answer to many of these questions. It's the single most important decision you'll make in your life. Not to stress you out about it, but it's the single most important decision you'll make in your life. And that, so the first thing to do now, not right now necessarily for all of you, don't you dare. The first thing to do now is to make sure that you choose wisely, and that you're looking for the right things, and that and that will set you up to have someone who will know when to push you and when not to push you, who will know how to bring out the very best in you. As far as what you could do before you're dating to set yourself up for success, I'm going to say 2 things. Maybe they're controversial, I don't know. Maybe they're not so much the minhag, but one is try to train yourself to become a morning person. Being a late night person works in yeshiva, it won't work in life in general. Try to train yourself to become a morning person. There are way fewer distractions in the morning. You're able to learn much more consistently when you learn to wake up early in the morning. And in general, if you wake up early in the morning and start your day in a successful way, in a way that you feel like you're accomplishing something in Ruchnius, it sets a tone for the rest of your day. But if your morning starts at 9 a.m. when you roll out of bed because you don't have to be on the train until 10 because the field that you work in has a late start and a late end to the day, then much less of a chance of continuing to grow and to develop. It's worth it. It's worth, you don't have to do it all at once, but start setting your clock back a little bit, your alarm clock a little bit earlier, every couple of months, and add a Seder before Shacharis. You should have a Seder before Shacharis, so that much more important than the late night Seder, and you'll see that will set you up, I think, for better success. Again, I know it's not a popular take, but I think one of my children told me that, was it Rabbi Turetsky that said that if you think of the 5 most successful people you know in any industry, chances are they wake up between 5 and 6 a.m. That's typically the case. Someone sent me a thing today that said something along the lines of, like a meme that said, "Don't stay up late to do anything that you wouldn't wake up early to do." Meaning, if you're staying up late to do it, but it's not something that you would wake up early to do, then it's probably not important enough to stay up late for. And a lot of times we make different decisions late at night than we make early in the morning. That's what it's basically saying. And the decisions aren't always wise when our willpower has waned late into the night. Second thing I would say is try to earn a little bit of money, very little bit of money even, but something at some point, whether it be through tutoring a younger kid or working on a summer program, and then give meiser from that money. Don't start your life, your adult life, without exercising your giving muscle. the plan is that one day you'll all be financially successful.
We'll give to Sha'alvim.
And you'll be able to give money to REITs and oh yeah, and the point is that you want to make sure that you're exercising that giving muscle even when you have very little, and when frankly it's not such a great challenge for you because you get free food at things like this, and your parents basically are supporting you for the most part, I imagine, through this stage of your life. So if you don't use the giving muscle, it will atrophy. So it's a good idea to make sure earn something and give meiser from that something that you earn.
So in addition to the broader stages that we spoke about before, there are also two sort of sub-stages that I wanted to mention briefly, and sort of figuring out how being a Ben Torah fits into that. The first sort of transition that one goes through is the transition to start dating and ultimately, Mirz Hashem, B'Shar Tova, getting married. So the question is, how does one properly balance a serious focus of Talmud Torah and growing with investing emotionally and practically in the girl that he's dating, ultimately in the wife that he has at that stage? And then the second question is, once you sort of transition from getting married and then having children, how do you balance being a Ben Torah, learning, being Kovei Itim in a serious way, while also being a present father to your children?
Okay, so as far as starting to date, now I've long been a believer in trying to get married fairly young, but one has to take that decision seriously about when they're going to start to date. There's only so many years that you're going to have the ability to learn Night Seder in a Beis Medrash, and it may be right for you to start to date after a very short amount of time in the YU Beis Medrash. But just realize that comes with a cost. Meaning, if every night you're on a date and or a couple of nights a week, and therefore you're not there for your chavrusa, and therefore your chavrusa is not there for you, and night seder becomes essentially a korban. So just realize that that's part of the decision of dating, and at what point you want to make that decision. At one point you want that to happen. How many sichos musar do you want to not be there for? I guess or you have to take that seriously. Once you start dating, so when I don't know if things are different now. When I was in yeshiva, guys had Thursday nights were the unofficial date night, and then Motzei Shabbos. So you went out 2 nights a week. That was the way you did it. I don't know. Now I think maybe people need more attention. So they feel like they have to date more frequently than that. But if you do, it should be something kavua. If you have a day where you have very few classes or classes that you don't have to be at, so then maybe you can work it out that your nights to date are Motzei Shabbos, and on that Tuesday where you have very few classes in early shiur, and you can do a Tuesday afternoon, to pick a girl up from Stern or wherever, that could be something that you do. But there should be some miskeret. It shouldn't just be free flowing, because when things are free flowing in that arena in general, in a lot of different ways, it could be a very dangerous thing. Once you're married and you have kids, so a person has to be attuned to the different stages of life. For years, I would always say, make sure you're home. To myself, I would say, make sure I'm home from 6 to 8 p.m. every night. Why do I have to be home from 6 to 8 p.m. every night? That's homework time and dinner time and bath time, and at 8 p.m. is bedtime. And then the kids grow up. So now 6 to 8 p.m. every night, if I was home, I'd be the only one home. So I have more kids in YU than I have at home. So the way to attend to my children is by staying here till late at night. So a person just has to be sensitive to the different stages in life and what's required of you, and not to fall into the trap of saying, well, this is what I've always done, so this is what I'm going to do. And again, early morning is your friend in this instance as well, because whatever's going on, very little is going on early in the morning. So that's something that. So you have to be flexible to know the different stages of life, but also solid. that at that stage in life, whatever zman you're konveya yourself to learn should be rock solid.
And now transitioning to sort of the next stage of life when it comes to someone who's trying to go into the world, make a parnasa. How should a Ben Torah think about ambition when it comes to making money, when it comes to getting a parnasa? Is striving for financial success lechatchila, b'diavad? Is it neutral? Is it okay? And also, are there certain professions that you would say better Ben Torah not go into for a variety of reasons? And
I think in general, whatever you choose to do with your life, it should be something that makes you happy. It should be something that makes you feel fulfilled. It shouldn't be a grind and a drag to go to work every day. It should be something that drives you and that you feel eager to and challenged to do, and to settle to be like an okay whatever job you take. I'm going to be a lawyer, but I'll be an okay lawyer. I'm not going to try to be a great lawyer. I'll be a doctor. I'll be an okay doctor. I'll only kill half the patients. I'm not going to be a great doctor. That's silly. Meaning, you should try to be great at whatever you do. You should try to excel at whatever you do. I think I say from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that I think boys in Torah V'das were telling their rebbeim that we cheat on all the secular studies exams because it gives us more time to learn Torah. And he said, look, I'm not telling you need to study secular studies at all, but if you're going to come to this school where we have secular studies, you got to do it right. Meaning, whatever you do, you should do right. There's nothing that you should do that's halfway. Person, I realize that sounds intense, if you're at full speed all the time. But what you're going to be doing the rest of your life, as a profession, you want to do that well. You want to do that right. So that's the right kind of ambition. Ambition for money, to chase money, is a very different kind of ambition.
What about gambling?
Yeah, that's great. What could be wrong with that? Isn't that easy money? Doesn't it always work out for people? No? Okay, so Harry clips that and puts it on YouTube short. Okay. But ambition for money is generally not a great motivator. It's not a healthy motivator, because when you're motivated just by making more money, you'll end up making not only poor career decisions by taking jobs that you're not going to be happy with, but also it leads oftentimes to dishonesty and materialism and keeping up and things that aren't really. A lot of times when you try to be really great at what you do, the money will come, and that's great. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that the money will come because you're trying to be great at what you do. But the ambition should be to be great at what you do. It shouldn't be that I just, he who dies with the most money wins. It shouldn't be that kind of attitude. And are there professions that a Jew, a religious Jew, a Ben Torah should look for and should strive for? Yeah, it's a Mishnah. That a person should always be melamidus beno umnus nikiya v'kala. So to the extent that you could find an umnus nikiya v'kala, something that doesn't involve, too many taivos related to women, something that doesn't involve taking over your life, where you work from 7 a.m. till 2 a.m., then those are the things to strive for, not to have the opposite of an umnus nikiya v'kala, even if umnus nikiya v'kala is not so available. I think what they say about with AI, that everyone's terrified of how it's going to take over everybody's jobs. So I was telling a friend of mine that if I didn't believe in God, I also would be terrified about what AI is going to do. But since I believe in God, Hashem runs the world, and probably it's a good thing somehow, and God will figure it out. But I think one of the ways that I've heard, I think Rabbi Breidowitz suggest that it might be a great thing. It might be a kiyum of what the Rambam says in Yemos HaMashiach, are melachta nasas halidei acherim, and we'll have time to sit and learn and engage in spiritual pursuits, because all the malacha is going to be between robotics and AI. We're not going to have to do anything. Everything will be done for us. How exactly money is going to work, I have no idea. But God will figure that out for us. So, but until then, which is like next week, but until then, umnus nikiya v'kala is certainly what we should look for.
Baruch Hashem, we're in a room surrounded by tremendous B'nai Torah. all of whom, to my knowledge, except maybe with the exception of Alan Pfeiffer, don't, we live in America entirely. We don't have homes in Eretz Yisrael. So the question is, can someone living a serious Torah life in America still live a lechatchila life? Or is living a life in Chutz La'aretz inherently b'diavad?
When all else is equal, so it's obvious that Eretz Yisrael is the place where a Jew belongs. When all else is equal. But it doesn't mean that it's the only factor in making a decision and that you're therefore living a b'diavad life, which you only have one of if you're Rav Moshe Feinstein, let's say. Because he lived his entire, like most people, we don't think back to Rav Moshe and we say, decent posek, but Nebuch, what a b'diavad life, you know? He lived his lechatchila life because for whatever cheshbonos he had, his impact and his avoda was to not be living in Israel. And I think it's healthy for a person to realize that we have to always make decisions based on what does Hashem want from us. And once we are doing what Hashem wants from us, and we honestly believe we're doing what Hashem wants from us, that is our lichatchila. Whether objectively it's a lichatchila or b'diavad or not, if in my life, ba'asher hu sham, this is what God wants from me. If, I always tell the story that I heard from Rabbi Aaron Palm, of Palm's son. He said that when he and his wife had their young, I think it was maybe their youngest child. It was a baby girl, and she had some developmental disability. I think it was Down syndrome or something like that. And he was like they were devastated. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle such a child. So he went to one of his rebbeim. I think it was Ramatzel Zilber, maybe. I don't know. He went to one of his rebbeim, who also had a severely developmentally, challenged or disabled child, and a special needs child. And the Rebbe told him, big Rosh Yeshiva, humongous Talmud Chacham. The Rebbe told him, my son is now 14 years old, and he doesn't know how to go to the bathroom or clean himself up, and he's too strong for my wife to be able to, to handle him when she needs to change him. So sometimes someone will come into the Beis Medrash, and they'll call me out because my wife needs me at home to clean up my son. And he said, I want to tell you, when I do that, I feel like the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Palm said, he looked at him like, Kohen Gadol, it's one thing to say it's what you got to do, but Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur? He said, yeah, Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, because this is, saying a shir, other people could say a shir too. Is my shir better or worse? I don't know. I hope it's a little better than the next man up who would take my place, but I don't really know if that's true or not. But here's what I know. There is only one person on this world who was assigned this task of taking care of this child, and that's me. That's my shlichus. I'm the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur. There's only one person who can do this avoda. And therefore, that's my avoda. So in a vacuum, if you were to ask someone, is it better to spend your day saying shiurim and learning Torah, or is it better to spend your day changing diapers? Right? So you would say, well, a lechatchila Jew says shiurim and learns Torah. But his lechatchila in that situation is changing diapers. So it's important to realize that any decision you make in life is not a one-factor decision. All else being equal, obviously, Eretz Yisrael is the ideal place for a Jew to be.
So obviously, every decision that a person's making, we're always striving to, like you said before, trying to think, what does the Ribbono Shalom want from me in this situation? But is there ever a danger of trying to be such a ben Torah in such an ideal way that it actually becomes unhealthy, that a person can develop a certain degree of perfectionism, OCD, anxiety, like I'm trying to be too perfect in my Avodas Hashem?
Yeah, you see it all the time. I don't think religion creates OCD, but it certainly halacha certainly gives it fertile ground to grow and to develop. I think a good gauge is to think about whether your behaviors match those of other B'nai Torah, or Rabbanim, or Gedolei Torah. If people look at you and are like, whatever that guy's doing is weird, then probably it's more of an OCD kind of thing than a healthy. Meaning, if you look at Rav Schachter and the way he runs his life on a day-to-day basis, it's just normal. He talks naturally and normally. All of his chumras are imperceptible unless you know what you're looking for. He doesn't do things in a weird way. He davens a slow Shema Nasri, but he doesn't say the same line 70 times. He just davens for a lot of stuff in Shema Koleinu. To look at what Gedolei Torah do. I was talking to a Talmud of mine who drove me to the airport when I came back from Eretz Yisrael on Tuesday night. So he told me this guy learned in Yeshivat Netiv Aryeh and then in YU and YU Smicha, and now he's in a kollel in Ranana. So he said that until he got to this kollel in Ranana, he didn't know that there's such a thing as learning in a beis medrash where there isn't a gadol hadar present. That you can just ask about anything in Kala Torah Kula, and they, of course, know it at the beginning. Like he's like, when I was in Netiv, there was Rav Nevensal. You could just ask him anything on anywhere, and then I get to YU, and there's Rav Schachter all day. You could just ask him anything. And now, like, he's in a kollel, and with all the respect to his fellow chavrei kollel and Rosh kollel, but there's such a thing. Sometimes you can be in a beis medrash without Gedolei Hadar, but so long as you are in a beis medrash with Gedolei Hadar, use that as a guide. If your behaviors don't match, Rabbi Kamenetsky once pointed out to me that we were at a wedding that Rav David Feinstein was Masada Kiddushin. And sometimes you look at a Masada Kiddushin and he's so nervous and he's got every chumrah and the Eidim didn't see fully the Mesiras Aksuba, whatever, they're like very worried about everything. Rav David Feinstein, it was like, this is natural. It was like there was no shtick, there's a certain, Torah is meant to be lived. And because it is meant to be lived, when one lives Torah, it should appear natural. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is takel ba'oraisa bara alma. The world was meant to fit with Torah. So if you look like you're not fitting well with the world as you're observing Torah, then probably there's something unhealthy there.
Just one final question to wrap things up a little bit. And this certainly is something relevant at all stages that a person finds himself. Should every Ben Torah see himself as a role model, as a leader in the community or in the general world? Or is it okay for me just to realize that I'm going to grow in a personal way, in a quiet way? I'm not going to be a leader. I'm not going to be a role model for others.
First of all, more important than being a role model is having a role model. More important than being a leader is having a leader. My first shmooze my first sichas musar I ever gave in the YU beis medrash when I came here 7 years ago, I noticed all over campus there were these signs: leaders of tomorrow, leadership this, leadership that. So the title of the sichas musar was followers of tomorrow. That we have enough chiefs. We need a few more Indians. We need a few more. How to be a good follower. That's an important thing also. How to learn how to follow Yerubeim, how to follow Gedolei Torah, how to follow those who have genuine leadership abilities and skills. To convince everybody that they're a leader, I don't know if that's the right mahalech necessarily. I'm pretty sure it's not. But so more important than being a leader is finding leaders and role models. At the same time, when you know that you're in a position where people are looking up to you, you're a camp counselor, you're an NCSY advisor, you're a father, you're in a position where there are going to be younger people looking up to you, or you're a boss in a company where employees look up to you. So then you have to take that responsibility seriously, and you have to set the proper example of that responsibility. Meaning, a person should never be should never ignore the fact that you live among other people. You should never be so self-centered that it's only about you. You should realize that there are other people around you, but know how to utilize those who are above you to strive to be like them, and know when others are looking up to you to make sure that you're setting a proper example.
Shkoyach. I wanted to thank Aryeh Lebowitz again for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here. I want to thank you guys for being here as well. Please feel free to continue to eat. For those interested in going to the YS Farm Sale, anyone who's signed up via that link will get just at the cash register, at the cashier, just tell them your name, they'll have a list, and they'll give you the discount. So Shkoyach, and Emir Hashem will be able to take all that Aryeh Lebowitz said and make it L'maisa.